Okay, we'll take a question for the commissioner. We have two microphone ladies. If you would please put your hand up when you get the microphone. If you would please state your name and your affiliation. We've got a question on the far left-hand side on the aisle.
Is that me?
That's you.
Okay. Barry Trammell with the Oklahoman.
Hi, Barry.
Bob, the Big Ten television contract soon will be up. They get a new one, and of course an expected bonanza. You had a great TV contract a year or two ago when you signed your new one, but the length of it, does that worry you that you might fall behind with the escalation of all the way all the media rights are going?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Actually, notwithstanding the Big Ten going to market, we feel pretty good about where we are right now because we're actually slightly shorter than everybody else. The ACC's is longer. The SEC's put some years on their contract because of the SEC network, and the Pac-12's is longer. So we're actually going to be to market before the others, but you're right, it's still 9 years away. There are some indications that are the value of our football and basketball games, while it was terrific at the time we did it, is now sliding relative to the value on those same games from other leagues. And so we actually have a look in on our contract with ESPN and Fox, and it doesn't give us the opportunity for a renegotiation necessarily, but it gives us a chance to look at the stipulations of the contract in light of modern circumstances. And so we'll do that at some point in time during the course of this year, and being able to attain optimal value is always something that's really important to us, and I think your assessment of the Big Ten's opportunity is right on target. I think they're likely to do well in their negotiation.
We got a question on the rear, all the way on the right-hand side in the rear.
Hi, Bob. Spinozzi, sports animal in Oklahoma City and 12thingstobook.com. With regard to player safety and the Big 12 taking the stance you're going to have 2 hitting days a week, don't you think that puts the conference at a decided disadvantage with regard from a competition standpoint, tackling drills, hitting drills, and things like that? And secondly, you mentioned the coaches were in support of this. Who, if any, football coaches were actually in support of less hitting?
In support of what?
Of less contact through the week. I mean, nationally, they're going to have 3 hitting days, and you've determined that the Big 12 will only have 2.
Well, what we determined was that our guys weren't using them anyway, and so I don't think they feel like they're giving up anything, but you should ask them that. I think some of it is also style, and some of our guys don't even hit 2 days a week. And the other thing is there's lots of opportunity for to be in helmets and shoulder pads without full contact. And when I say full contact, that means taking people to the ground. And so it's there's a lot of wear and tear that goes on during the course of the football season, and I don't think that we're going to find that this is a disadvantage. In fact, I think you may find that you have a healthier team in the second half of the season. The NFL has a rule that they only have 11 days of contact after the completion of their preseason camp. So if they can get by on 11 days, we can certainly get by on twice that.
Further questions for Commissioner Bowlsby? We've got a question up on the front left side, all the way up on the. Kirk, put your hand up again so she can see.
Kirk Bowlsby, Austin American. Bob, I'll go ahead and ask you about Dave Bourne's comments. Do you feel the league is at a disadvantage, and do you feel like
I lost the pool, by the way. I thought that would be the first question.
Oh, sorry. Couldn't get to the mic fast enough. So, does it reflect a majority of school presidents, just one president, or how many?
Well, I don't know that I'm prepared to take a straw poll for you right now, but first of all, it'll be the president's decision. It isn't my decision. It isn't our athletic director's decisions, although they'll certainly have input into it. but it's our presidents and chancellors that will consider it. It is my understanding at the present time that the majority of our presidents and chancellors believe 10 is the right number for us. There are those that believe we should get larger, and they feel strongly about it. There are those who believe we should stay at 10, and they feel strongly about it. And there are probably 4 or 5 in the middle who are persuadable one way or the other. And I think that's exactly where we're at. But at the present time, I don't think there's critical mass for expansion. It will continue to be a topic about which we spend at least a little time at every meeting talking about it. But until that majority shifts, it's a purely academic conversation. I've always thought that I was personally at a psychological disadvantage. So I don't know that I'm threatened by that, but I don't believe we are at a disadvantage. Relative to the playoff, I don't think 1 year makes a trend. We were very close to having 2 teams in last year, and you really don't have to have much of an imagination to see how that might have worked out, where we would have gotten 1 and maybe 2 without too much of a stretch. And so, if we go another year and get left out, and it appears to be systemic, we need to be mindful of it, and that's why we've gone about the process of trying to get the postseason rules deregulated. We think that gives us a full array of options, but 1 year doesn't make a trend, and so I don't believe we're disadvantaged at this point, but that doesn't mean a disadvantage couldn't develop or couldn't be shown to exist, but I think it's the majority of our CEOs right now that believe likewise.
We have a question over here on the right-hand side towards the front.
On the same, Art DeLugage, the Llano News, the same subject, this business of disadvantage, isn't it possible it could be a disadvantage if an unbeaten team loses a championship game in a conference final?
Well, you've all seen it more up close and personal than I have, but I think I'm right on these numbers. I believe there were 11 occasions in the past where we had a team go into our postseason championship with a chance to contend for the national championship. I believe I'm correct in saying that team is 6-5. So 50% of the time, our best team was eliminated from consideration by losing in the championship game. So I don't. You certainly don't have that risk if you don't play the championship game.
We have a question about halfway back on the first aisle on the left. He's got his hand up right there.
Myron Patton Fox, 25 in Oklahoma City. You talked a lot about scheduling here recently, about the need to pick up conference, non-conference scheduling for teams. Are you confident that schools will do that?
We have proceeded as if it is. We've had a lot of discussions about this among our ADs, and I know our coaches have talked about it a little bit too. I could capably argue either side of it from a mandatory standpoint, because I think coaches need to have prerogative in terms of how they get their team ready, and some coaches believe a tough preseason does that best. Others believe a lighter preseason does that best, and I think we have to respect those experiences and respect the prerogatives of individual coaches. Having said that, there isn't any question that the non-conference schedule of each of our institutions affects the strength of each of the other members of our league. We can't deny that. And so I don't think it means that everybody has to play 3 top 20 teams in their preseason. I also think it doesn't mean that everybody has to play 3 that are FCS or in the bottom of FBS. And so I think there's a happy medium there. Our athletic directors have not chosen to make it mandatory. They have respected those prerogatives on an institutional basis. I think we will continue to have that conversation, and it's possible that we could get to a point where we need a little more structure around it. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's a live issue, and we know that the strengths of some are affected by the strengths or weaknesses of others, and so we're gonna continue to talk about it, and I suppose it's possible we would get to the place where we did something on a mandatory basis like some of the other conferences have done. We haven't chosen to do that yet.
We got a question all the way in the rear left side, and then we'll move up the inside.
Eric G, 1077 The Franchise in Oklahoma City. And just to follow up on that, when you talk with other conference commissioners, do you envision a day where it's just Power 5 conferences playing each other? Because it seems like the Power 5 conferences have done a very good job of separating themselves from the rest of the FBS.
Well, I don't think we have any intention to separate ourselves from the rest of FBS or from the rest of college football. I think keeping the football championship subdivision strong, keeping the other 5 FBS conferences strong is in our best interest. We have no desire to draw bright lines. Everything we've done with autonomy has been permissive in nature. We feel like we need to make rules that are binding upon us and that meet the needs of our programs, but that we haven't said to anybody, you can't do the same thing that we do. And so I guess full cost of attendance is the best example of that. So, you know, I think that we are in a situation where we need some opportunity to be the masters of our own fate, but that isn't to put in place rules that put distance between us and everybody else. We just need to put in place rules that address the issues in our environment, and if others want to address them in the same way, that's fine. If they want to try and address them in other ways, that's fine too. But we're not trying to run anybody out of business. We're not trying to stop playing the other FBS schools or the FCS schools. I think that strong college football is strength for all of us.
Got a question on the aisle on the left, and then we'll go to the left-hand side.
Randy Peterson, Des Moines Register. Right in front of you, Bob.
Put your hand up. There you go.
Sorry.
Staying with the cost of attendance, which is now between, I don't know, roughly $2,400 to $5,000, something like that. Do you envision that number, the high end, getting even higher as we move forward with this?
It's a great question, and I don't know that I have a great answer, Randy. There is some indication that the numbers have already crept. The Office of Financial Aid on every campus is the place where these decisions are supposed to be made. There isn't supposed to be any athletics input into it, but I guess I'd be naive if I didn't think that there had been lots of conversations and perhaps there was some back and forth on that. My estimation of what happens with that number is I think they're probably going to tend towards a mean. I don't think some institutions are going to go to $12,000 because I think, you know, it's that's a number that's binding on everybody else at that institution. It dictates how much money you can borrow. It dictates how much Pell Grant you can get. It dictates what kinds of grant programs you're eligible for and what kinds of student assistance you can get. And so it's a lot more than just the athletic environment. And so I think over time they will the bottom may come up and the top may either sit still or come down a little bit, but it's I think that it's likely that there are some built-in governors there. Time will tell.
Got a question on the aisle left side.
Jason Kersey from the Oklahoman. Bob, the SEC has prohibited, I guess, transfers of people who have had domestic violence incidents. Is that something you guys have had conversations about?
No, we haven't really talked about it. In fact, I just became aware of that when I was reading Greg Sankey's comments from the SEC Media Day. I think it's something we will talk about. You know, the issue of kids with baggage. You know, you can argue that nobody should be exonerated or should be prohibited from being involved just because they make one mistake. On the other hand, kids that have histories don't seem to have too much problem finding a place that they can go and play college sports. So I think it's a really good conversation to have, but it's not one we've had yet.
We got a question on the aisle right up about halfway in front of you. Put your hand up so that, there you go.
Tim Everson, Kansas State Collegian. Over the past decade, there have been 3 Big 12 schools that have competed in the national championship, and it's been a decade since a Big 12 school has won a national championship. Does that concern the conference at all, and what do you think kind of has led that to happen?
Well, yes, it concerns us because of the aspirations that I noted earlier. We don't want to just participate in the playoff. We want to win championships. I think that's a clear enough aspiration, and we haven't been as successful as we would have liked to have been. So, what do we have to do? Well, we have to get better. We have to win big games when we have them before us, and we have to demonstrate by competition in the postseason that our conference has led us to be highly competitive at the end of the season. And so, you know, there are as many Division I recruits in Florida, Texas, and California as there are in the other 47 states combined. So almost all of our schools are recruiting heavily in Texas, and we have lots of competition here. So what do we have to do? We have to recruit better, we have to develop better, we have to play better, we have to win the big games when we have a chance to win the big games. These things tend to be cyclical. I don't think that those things sit tight forever. It's easy to forget that until Ohio State went through and ran the table in the postseason, that everybody thought the Big Ten was having a fairly poor year last year. They hadn't won a lot of games, and yet the top end of the league is pretty good. I think likewise the top of our league is really good, and I think all 10 of our schools are really competitive. We just about every year have a big upset of some sort, and the fact that 6 schools have won our championship is indicative of the level of competition. But you know, that level of competition needs to have a cumulative effect, and we hope that we can do the things that are necessary to have that cumulative effect lead to success in the postseason, particularly in the playoff.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowlsby. We appreciate your comments and answering the questions.